Chosen one. Listen closely. This isn't just another voice in the crowd. This is heaven, pausing the noise of the world to deliver what your spirit has been waiting for. You're not scrolling by accident. You're not hearing this message by chance. This moment has been orchestrated by divine design. From the beginning, before your first tear, before your first trauma, before you even knew how to spell the word pain, you were chosen. You were chosen before the heartbreak, before the divorce, before the betrayal, before the delay, before the anxiety that's been choking your chest at night. You were marked as God's property in a realm that eyes cannot see, but every demon recognizes. You've felt it your entire life, even when you didn't have the language for it. You were never like the rest. They laughed when you cried. They partied when you prayed. You never fit in, not because you were less, but because you were set apart. And I know you've been wondering why the road you're on has been so rough. Why does it feel like you're always in a battle that no one else can see? Why does everything take longer for you? Why are your prayers delayed when others seem to get instant answers? It's not because you're cursed. It's because you're called. And when God calls, He doesn't hand out shortcuts. He crafts character in the quiet places. It was written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 42, verse 31. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. That's not just poetic language. That's your prophecy. You see, the warfare around you isn't proof of your weakness. It's evidence of your weight. Heavy callings attract heavy attacks. But hear this. Chosen one, the fact that you're still standing after everything you've endured is divine proof that no weapon formed against you could prosper. They formed. Oh, they formed, but they failed. You've walked through seasons where the silence of God was deafening. You prayed and felt nothing. You sowed in tears and reaped more waiting. You showed up for everyone else, while your own heart was breaking in secret. But it wasn't for nothing. The silence was sanctification. The waiting was weaving. Heaven was designing something greater than your mind could contain. There's something about you. Something that hell tried to assassinate early because your presence disrupts darkness. When you walk into a room, something shifts. People don't even know why they react the way they do to you. You're either deeply loved or irrationally hated. That's because your spirit isn't neutral. You are a divine agitator to demonic systems. You were born to dismantle cycles, to break curses, to call things out of the shadows. You are a light bearer in a world comfortable with dimness. So why the detours? Why the back roads when others took highways? Because straight paths don't build strong warriors. And that's what you are. Not a victim. Not just a survivor. A chosen one. This path you're on, it's not a detour. It's a design. There were moments you cried thinking you were lost. But in heaven's map, you were never off course. You were being forged, not forgotten. Processed, not punished. Hidden, not rejected. This is why it's taken so long. This is why relationships fell apart, because their character couldn't carry your calling. This is why opportunities vanished, because what they offered was too small for what God is about to pour out in you. You were always meant for more. And now, finally, you're starting to feel it deep within, like something is stirring, rising, breaking open. That's your spirit, remembering who you are. You're not just trying to get through life, you're here to shake it. You are God's response to a generational cry. The prayers of your great-grandmother, you are their answer. The curses that ran through your family line, you are their end. This is the season where your obedience will break what's been bound for decades. And if you've read this far, you know this is not hype. This is heaven. This is divine truth, interrupting the timeline of your doubt. So before we go further, this is your moment to align your spirit with this word. If something inside you is stirring, I want you to comment this number right now. Comment 777 below a number of divine alignment and spiritual completion. Type it as a prophetic act. Not for me, for you, to declare, I am chosen. I am aligned. I am ready. And if this is piercing your spirit like a divine arrow, don't scroll past. Like, comment, and share this with someone else who knows they've been marked, but have been too afraid to rise. There's power in your agreement. Make sure you subscribe, because this journey doesn't end here. It's just beginning. You are not random. You are not a mistake. You are not behind. You are chosen. You are designed. You are dangerous to darkness. And your story is just getting started. That wound you carry, it wasn't a sign that God abandoned you. It was a divine interruption, a wake-up call from heaven, a holy siren sent not to destroy you, but to awaken what was sleeping inside you, because you were starting to forget who you are. You were beginning to believe the lies, that you're just average, that the broken pieces disqualify you, that maybe you missed your chance. But pain is a messenger, and your pain was heaven's emergency broadcast system blaring into the silence of your soul saying, wake up, rise up, there's more. It didn't feel holy when it happened. It felt cruel, unfair, maybe even random. But chosen one, nothing about your life has ever been random. God allowed that wound not to harm you, but to mark you, not to weaken you, but to wean you off what couldn't follow you into your next chapter. Think back. When did you begin to pray deeper? When did you start listening for God instead of just talking at Him? Was it in the comfort of easy days or in the valley of your breakdown? It wasn't the blessing that woke you up. It was the bleeding. You learned to kneel not because you were taught, but because life hit you so hard you had no choice but to fall. And it was in that posture of pain that your real identity began to emerge. You didn't find your calling on the mountaintop. You found it in the ashes, because that's where the chosen ones are made. You weren't called from a place of applause. You were called from a place of agony, and though the wound still aches some days, look again. That scar is proof that the enemy failed, that you made it out, that even when the world walked away, heaven stayed. Some wounds didn't heal the way you thought they would. Some memories still sting. But you're not broken. You've been branded, not by pain, but by purpose. God used the cut to shape the calling. Every loss refined you. Every betrayal positioned you. Every abandonment cleared the room for His presence. Because not everyone can walk with someone chosen, and that's why some had to leave. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't even their fault. It was divine orchestration. You see, when God allows pain to enter the life of a chosen one, He's not punishing them. He's pruning them, cutting off what once fit in the last season, but would suffocate the next one. You may not like how it happened. You may never fully understand why it had to come through heartbreak, through death, through trauma. through loss. But heaven never wastes pain. God repurposes it. And when you finally stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" everything begins to shift. Because here's the truth. The wound wasn't the end. It was the initiation. It opened your eyes. It realigned your heart. It pulled you out of comfort. And it pushed you into purpose. What felt like breaking was actually birthing. What looked like the grave was actually the gateway. There's something sacred about those who've been wounded and still worship, because now you carry compassion. Now you recognize pain in others. Now you walk in authority. Not because of what you've learned, but because of what you've lived. You're not just quoting verses, you've become the verse. Your life is a testimony that God heals, restores, and revives. And no, you're not perfect. You still bleed sometimes, but you've been refined. You've been made real. And heaven trusts those who limp more than those who fake perfection. We find in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 13, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." That's not a cliche. That's your battle cry. You don't draw strength from circumstances anymore. You draw it from the Christ who met you in the middle of your chaos and never left. So, let the wound remind you not of the pain, but of the turning point, that moment when heaven grabbed your life by the collar and said, "You are mine." That season that broke your plans but birthed your purpose. That interruption that became your invitation into the deeper things of God. Chosen one. You are not a victim of random suffering. You are the result of divine construction. You were wounded. Yes, but now you are wide awake. And you are dangerous to the darkness because of it. Chosen one. The reason they rejected you wasn't because you weren't good enough. It wasn't because you were too much. It was because your spirit was outgrowing the room long before your body ever left it. You thought they pushed you away. But heaven was the one doing the pushing. What looked like rejection was actually redirection. Every time you begged for them to stay and they still left, it was mercy. Every door that closed was not a failure. It was a fingerprint of God saying, "Not this way. I've got something better." Alu, you cried over what you didn't know was blocking your next breakthrough. You thought losing them was the end, but it was the beginning. You thought the silence meant God wasn't speaking, but he was speaking louder through the silence than he ever had through words. You just had to lose the noise to hear him, because, chosen one, if they had stayed, they would have contaminated the calling. If that deal had gone through, it would have tied you to something too small for your destiny. God had to break it to build you. He had to let it fall apart so you could finally fall into place. You've been mourning what was never meant to last. God didn't let it succeed because it would have suffocated you. That relationship, that circle, that job, that path, they were too shallow for your depth. He didn't just rescue you from heartbreak. He rescued your purpose. You were being elevated. But not everyone can breathe at high altitudes. You were asking God to let certain people come with you, but they didn't have the spiritual lungs to survive where he was taking you. So instead of asking why they left, start thanking God they didn't stay. Because what you saw as rejection, heaven called protection. Look back for a moment. That thing you wanted so badly, that opportunity you were crushed to lose, where would it have led you now that you're past it? Don't you see the trap it really was? That person didn't reject you because you lacked value. They couldn't stand next to your light and still stay in darkness. Your calling convicted them. Your purity exposed their perversion. Your hunger for truth made their comfort with compromise too uncomfortable. And so, they left. Or worse, they betrayed you. But even betrayal has a purpose. Judas was necessary for the cross. Without rejection, there would be no resurrection. Without the no, there would be no next. What wounded you also launched you. Their leaving didn't disqualify you, it qualified you. Because the ones God uses the most are the ones who've learned to walk with tears in their eyes and destiny in their hands. So let the world misunderstand you. Let them mislabel you. Let them walk away. You don't need their permission to walk in purpose. You were anointed before you were accepted. And some of the greatest chapters in your story will be written in the silence after rejection. The prophet Elijah spoke as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 21. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. The time for wavering is over. You've spent too long trying to be accepted by people who were never assigned to your destiny. You've been trying to fit into circles that couldn't handle your calling. But today, this moment, is your confirmation that the rejection you faced wasn't random. It was spiritual strategy. Heaven rerouted you through heartbreak to align you with heaven's highway. And now, you're not just walking forward, you're walking lighter, freed from the weight of needing to be understood, free from the pressure of being liked. You don't need their applause. You've been affirmed by the King. So this is the moment. Chosen one, let the rejection become your redirection. Let it ignite your rise. And as a prophetic act of release and agreement, comment, I let go. N. Say it out loud. Write it below. I let go. Let go of needing their explanation. Let go of replaying what went wrong. Let go of trying to fix what God already removed. This isn't bitterness. This is boldness. This is you choosing to step into alignment with what God is doing, even when it doesn't make sense. Even when it still stings a little. Even when the wound is fresh. Because you don't need them to come back to move forward. You are done chasing closed doors. You are done begging for what was beneath you. You are done crying over what couldn't carry your crown. You are not empty. You are being elevated. You are not rejected. You are being redirected. You are not broken. You are being rebuilt for greater. This is the season where rejection turns into revelation, and revelation leads to your release. Chosen one. Your future is not behind that closed door. It's ahead waiting. Prepared. Glorious. Let it go. You weren't built to blend in. From the moment you came into this world, the blueprint of your soul refused to conform. You tried to look like them, talk like them, move like them, but something always broke the illusion. You never quite fit. And that wasn't failure. That was proof. Proof that you were never made for average. You were divinely coded to stand apart. And that difference has been following you like a shadow your entire life. You felt it in childhood, when your thoughts went deeper than your peers. When your questions disturbed the comfort of shallow answers. You felt it in your teenage years, when the pull toward purpose began to war against the pressure to conform. And even now, in your adulthood, that holy tension still burns, the desire to belong. Crushed under the weight of a greater truth, you were not meant to belong to them. God didn't call you to fit in. He called you to stand out. And that's why the crowd never embraced you. That's why you always felt like the outsider, the one who couldn't quite find your place. But listen closely. Misfits in the world often carry mantles in the spirit. You were misaligned here because you're aligned up there. Heaven doesn't give kingdom assignments to crowd pleasers. It gives them to consecrated disruptors. There's a fire in you that cannot be duplicated. It doesn't look like everyone else's journey. It doesn't follow their timelines. It doesn't obey their logic. Because your design wasn't man-made, it was God-breathed. The same breath that hovered over the waters in Genesis now fuels your every step. You don't move by sight, you move by spirit. And because of that, your very presence irritates comfort zones. You've probably noticed how some people become defensive just being around you. They say you're too intense, too spiritual, too deep, when in truth, it's not you that makes them uncomfortable. It's the light you carry. That light disturbs their shadows. It convicts what they've grown used to hiding. It exposes what they've tried to keep buried. So they push you away. But don't shrink. Don't dim your light just to make others feel better in their darkness. You were never meant to camouflage. You were meant to illuminate. The gifts inside you weren't placed there to be hidden. They were forged to be flames. Your voice was created to call things out. Your life is a signal to the spiritually sleeping. You are not a follower in this world. You are a forerunner in the kingdom. God placed something inside you that does not tolerate compromise. That's why sin never sat well with you. Even when you tried to blend into the background, your conscience screamed louder than the music. That's why lukewarm Christianity never satisfied you. You saw through the motions. You couldn't pretend. You wanted more. You wanted truth. You wanted Him. Because you weren't just called to know the truth. You were called to carry it. And that's a heavy call. It's why you wrestle so deeply with things others ignore. It's why you feel spiritual pressure that others don't even recognize. You're not imagining it. You're under constant spiritual surveillance. Hell has been tracking your steps because it knows. One fully awakened chosen, one can wreck entire systems of bondage with a single act of obedience. You weren't born to be normal. You were born to be set apart. You were born to disrupt, to rebuild, to prophesy, to restore. You're not just passing through life, hoping for a moment of peace. You were sent here as a spiritual invader, an undercover kingdom agent moving with fire, armed with the word, wrapped in grace, and filled with glory. It was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. And you need to believe that. You need to walk in that. Because the world is screaming confusion, and you've been anointed with clarity. The culture is drowning in fear, and you've been armed with power. People are looking for something real, and your life is about to become the evidence they've been waiting for. So no more hiding. No more apologizing for your depth. No more watering yourself down to be tolerated. You're not here to be accepted. You're here to lead. Whether they clap for you or crucify you, you will rise. Whether they understand you or slander you, you will move. Whether you're surrounded or alone, you will advance. Because what's inside you was never meant to fit in. It was meant to shift atmospheres. And that's exactly what you're going to do. Hell hates your existence. Let that settle for a moment. Every attack you've endured, every battle that's come at you since before you even had words to fight back, it wasn't because you were weak. It was because you are dangerous. The kingdom of darkness doesn't waste energy on those who pose no threat. You were targeted early because hell saw what was coming. before you had vision. Hell had a preview. It saw the healing in your hands before you ever prayed a prayer. It saw the power in your words before you even found your voice. It saw the fire in your spirit before you even knew what the Holy Spirit was. And because of that, it's tried to break you every way it could. You've taken blows that would have buried others. You've walked through nights so dark you thought morning would never come. You've been surrounded by storms while others danced in sunshine. But no matter what came against you, it could not destroy the call on your life. Why? Because the anointing doesn't come easy. It is born in the fire. God allowed you to walk through those flames, not because He abandoned you, but because He was activating you. You were forged in warfare. You were refined in rejection. You were baptized in heartbreak. And all of it has become the oil that now flows from your life. That's why your words carry weight. That's why your prayers shift atmospheres. That's why you can see through lies, call out fakes, and break chains others don't even recognize. You're not just gifted, you're anointed. And that anointing terrifies hell. You've been wondering why life hasn't been fair. Why others can coast while you keep getting hit. It's because you're not on the same assignment. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be lethal to darkness, to deception, to every demonic strategy that's tried to weave itself through your family line. You were born into a war zone with a mark on your life and a mantle on your back. And the more you rise, the more resistance you'll face. Don't be surprised when it intensifies. Don't panic when the attacks come in waves. That's confirmation. That's clarity. You don't wrestle against flesh and blood. You wrestle against principalities. And you've been given weapons not made with human hands. This isn't just a battle. This is your birthright. The Word of God declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, verse 4, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." That valley didn't consume you. It commissioned you. You've walked through shadows, but you've never walked alone. The enemy thought you'd die in that depression, that heartbreak, that betrayal, that addiction, that failure. But here you are, breathing, rising, healing. And every time you stand up again, every time you speak life again, every time you choose love again, you make hell tremble. You are a walking contradiction to the lies the enemy told about you. You shouldn't be free, but you are. You shouldn't have peace, but you do. You shouldn't still believe, but your faith is rising stronger than ever. This isn't hype. This is heaven speaking directly to the warrior in you. You are not here by chance. You are assigned. Every gift you carry, every scar you bear, every tear you've sown, it's all been part of the making of someone who can't be bought, can't be broken, and won't be silenced. You are dangerous because you know who you are, and even more dangerous because you know whose you are. So don't retreat. Don't shrink. Don't second-guess what God is revealing in this season. Hell has launched everything it could to take you out and failed. That means your next chapter isn't just survival, it's dominion. It's time to take territory. It's time to lead. It's time to open your mouth and remind darkness that you are not afraid. This is not the moment to go quiet. This is the moment to rise, fully awake, fully armored, and fully alive. And if this word has hit something deep in your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. There are other chosen ones walking through the same fire, feeling isolated in a battle they don't understand. Like this message, not just to support it, but to agree with it. Share it with someone else who needs this reminder today. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Not because of a name or a platform, but because this space is holy ground for those who carry weight, for those who've been hunted by hell but held by heaven. You are not alone in this fight, and there's more coming that will speak to every part of your purpose. You are not average. You are not overlooked. You are heaven's answer to a hellish age. And hell hates you for it. But it can't stop you. You keep getting back up. That's the part they don't understand. That's what hell underestimated. It didn't expect you to rise again. After the heartbreak, after the betrayal, after the breakdown, you've been knocked down more times than most. But somehow you keep rising, and not just barely. You rise stronger, sharper, wiser, hungrier. There is a bounce-back anointing on your life that cannot be explained by human strength. It's supernatural. It's divine. It's the kind of resilience that only comes from being held by the hand of God in the middle of the valley when everyone else had walked away. Some people mistook your survival for luck. But this isn't luck. This is legacy. You were built for this. You were born for this. Heaven doesn't invest this kind of grace into just anyone. God has chosen you as a carrier of comeback power, not just for yourself, but for everyone assigned to your voice, your life, your testimony. You've lived through things that should have permanently disfigured your soul, but somehow, your praise is louder, your faith is deeper, your love is purer. That's not because of you. That's because of the God within you. What's keeping you standing isn't your willpower, it's His grip. And the enemy can't stand it. Every time you get back up, you round hell's plans. You throw confusion into the enemy's camp. The attacks weren't just about stopping you, they were about silencing your witness. But instead of silence, your life is now a shout. God is still good. God is still faithful. God is still able. You've learned something that many people never do. Falling doesn't disqualify the chosen. It refines them. It awakens them. It purifies them. Because you don't rise by your own strength, you rise by surrender. And every surrender is another step into your destiny. There were days you didn't want to get out of bed. Moments when you questioned everything. Seasons where the silence of God made you feel abandoned. But chosen one, even when you were down, you weren't done. Heaven had already written a chapter called Restoration, long before your failure showed up on the page. You thought you had reached the end, but God was just turning the page. There is a remnant of chosen ones like you who have been pressed, crushed, forgotten by man, but remembered by heaven. You've been hidden, not rejected, protected, not abandoned, preserved, not passed over. And now, you're stepping into a season of visible resurrection. This kind of bounce back doesn't come from motivational quotes or positive thinking. It comes from something deeper, a knowing, a fire, a covenant. God has marked you for recovery, not just to recover, but to reign after you recover. Because you didn't rise by accident, you rose by appointment. We find in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. That verse isn't a slogan. It's your survival story. That strength that held you when you were breaking, that was Him. That peace that met you when logic couldn't, that was Him. That clarity that found you in the middle of chaos, Him again. You're not just standing, you're rising into your role. This bounce back isn't about reclaiming what was lost. It's about stepping into what was always yours: authority, purpose, destiny. And this time, you're not rising silently. You're rising dangerously to every plan the enemy tried to deploy against your life. Because the enemy wasn't just trying to delay you. He was trying to discredit you. He wanted you to rise with guilt, with shame, with confusion. But God is covering you with glory. And now, the same people who saw your fall will witness your rise, not to boast, but to prove that God doesn't abandon his chosen ones. He restores. He rebuilds. He relaunches. You are walking proof. Proof that grace is real. Proof that failure isn't final. Proof that heaven never gave up on you. So now, the heavens are watching. The angels are standing. The cloud of witnesses is cheering. Why? Because you're rising again. And this time, you're not rising just for yourself. You're rising for every person whose deliverance is locked inside your obedience. Your recovery is a prophetic message to hell. You should have taken me out when you had the chance. But now, I'm too rooted, too equipped, too anointed, and I won't go back. So, if you know this word is for you, if you feel the fire returning to your bones, if your spirit has started to stir again, if your comeback has already begun, comment this number right now. Comment Martu Empat Empat, symbolizing divine stability, foundation, and angelic alignment. Type it not as a trend, but as a testimony. You're not who you used to be. You're not where you used to be. And this bounce back is not the end. It's your launch. You thought the isolation meant something was wrong with you. You wondered why doors kept closing, why people pulled away, why your phone stopped ringing when you needed connection the most. But chosen one, what you thought was abandonment was actually preparation. God hid you on purpose. There are seasons in the life of the chosen where heaven goes silent, not because you're forgotten, but because something is being forged. Isolation is never punishment for the ones marked by heaven. It's the training ground, the place where noise dies so clarity can live. You were never meant to be formed in the crowd. You were called to be carved in the cave. Hot does his deepest work in hiddenness. Moses had his wilderness. David had his fields. Elijah had his cave. Jesus himself had his 40 days alone in the desert. Why do you think your journey would be any different? You weren't being overlooked. You were being overhauled. In the silence, God was rewiring your soul. In the quiet, He was teaching you how to hear His voice. When no one else was around, He became your only source. That was the design, because He wanted to ensure your identity wasn't rooted in attention, applause, or affirmation from people, but in His presence alone. There's something sacred about being unseen. That hidden season may have hurt, but it humbled you. It stripped away the layers of performance. It untangled you from needing to be validated. It detoxed your spirit from the addiction to being liked. In isolation, all the masks came off, and only what was real remained. And what remained was strong, stronger than you know, because the strength you gained in private is the strength you'll need in public. What God built in secret, He will reveal in power, but not before He finishes the foundation, because what He's building in you can't be shaken. That's why it took longer. That's why others got there faster. That's why you were benched while they were being promoted. But you weren't forgotten. You were being fortified. The quiet season was never about delay, it was about depth. You weren't being punished, you were being planted. And when a seed is planted, it feels like burial, darkness, silence, pressure. But that's not death. That's the beginning of multiplication. Isolation wasn't your end, it was the soil of your rise. You were covered by divine hands while the roots were taking hold. You had to grow underground before you could carry anything above ground. Because God never sends his chosen ones to battle without first proving them in the unseen place. Your cave was the proving ground. And yes, it was lonely. Yes, it was confusing. Yes, you doubted your value. You questioned your calling. You even asked God if he still remembered you. But now you're beginning to see the wisdom of his ways. If he had exposed you too soon, you would have bled in public. If he had elevated you before the breaking, you would have crumbled under the weight. The hidden season saved you. It taught you the rhythms of heaven. It gave you discernment. It showed you how to hear the whisper in the storm. You learned to pray without performance, to fast without fanfare, to weep without witnesses. And that kind of secret history with God, that's what hell fears most. Because now, when you speak, there's substance. You don't talk theory, you talk testimony. You don't quote cliché, you carry conviction. The fire in you wasn't borrowed, it was born. And no applause can replicate what was built in the cave. It was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. Fear tried to speak in the silence. But now you know who you are. The quiet didn't crush you, it clarified you. The dark didn't drown you, it developed you. And now you're dangerous. Because those who've been hidden in God cannot be shaken by man. You're stepping into a season where what was private will be made public, but not to elevate your name. To glorify his people will wonder where you came from, how you carry such depth, why you speak with such authority. They won't know the hours you spent on your face, the nights you warred in prayer, the seasons you walked alone so you could walk in truth. But God knows. He sees what was built in secret, and now he's about to breathe on it. So walk forward, not as someone left behind, but as someone launched by isolation. You're not wounded, you're woken. And what's coming next? It couldn't have happened without what felt like hiding. You weren't forgotten. You were forged. And now, it's time. You've been assigned, not abandoned. It's time to settle that in your spirit, once and for all. Because too many times, you've stood in the quiet places and whispered, God, where are you? You've looked at the silence and mistook it for distance. You've felt the stillness and assumed it meant absence. But chosen one, let this truth uproot every lie. He never left you. You were not deserted. You were deployed. Sometimes the assignment feels like abandonment because it pulls you into unfamiliar territory. God removes the familiar, not to punish you, but to position you. He will dismantle your comfort zone if that's what it takes to uncover your calling. And for someone like you, marked by heaven, hunted by hell, that calling was never going to come cheap. The path he put you on wasn't supposed to feel easy. It wasn't supposed to make sense to the crowd. Your steps were never ordinary, because your destiny is anything but average. So, yes, you felt alone. Yes, you've walked through things with no blueprint, no mentor, no cheering section. But that doesn't mean you were forsaken. It means you were trusted. God doesn't send unproven vessels into battle. He sends the forged, the faithful, the ones who've learned how to walk through fire and keep moving. You were chosen for assignments others never even saw, because He knew you wouldn't fold under pressure. You didn't ask for this kind of weight, but you carry it with grace. And heaven has taken notice. The attacks you've endured weren't signs that you're off track. They're evidence that you're on assignment. The enemy doesn't strike the idle. He targets the active. You've been walking through warfare because your life is disrupting darkness. Every step you take in obedience shakes foundations in the unseen. Don't let the silence deceive you. God speaks the loudest in the stillness, but not with noise, with instruction. When you stop measuring His presence by how emotional you feel and start recognizing His hand in your alignment, you begin to see the truth. Every delay was divine. Every redirection was revelation. Every pause was purpose. God wasn't late. He was layering your story with precision. There are assignments on your life that required Him to remove distractions. He had to reroute you. He had to separate you. Not everyone around you was safe. Not every opportunity was ordained. Some doors looked like favor, but were actually traps. And so, He allowed the rejection. He permitted the pruning, because His assignment over your life was too costly to risk compromise. And even when you questioned Him, when your prayers felt like they hit the ceiling, when your heart ached with loneliness, when it felt like heaven went quiet after you said yes, He remained steady. Because faith doesn't always feel like fire. Sometimes it feels like silence. Sometimes it looks like still standing when everything around you says give up. That's when heaven takes note. You weren't abandoned. You were protected. You weren't benched. You were being built. And now, even when you don't see it, heaven is still working behind the scenes, aligning things, arranging moments, whispering your name into rooms you've never entered, preparing divine connections, quietly assigning angels to go before you. Your prayers didn't vanish. They've been gathering, and when the appointed time comes, they will pour. You may feel invisible, but you're not. You may feel passed over, but you're actually being positioned. It was written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 42, verse 31. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. Chosen one. Your wings have been growing in silence, and soon they will stretch in flight. Don't despise the slow season. It's where the strategy is born. Don't curse the quiet days. They are where your authority is refined. You're not waiting to begin your assignment. You're living it right now. Every act of obedience. Every moment you choose faith over fear. Every time you pray, instead of panic, you are moving in purpose. Your assignment may not be loud. It may not look like everyone else's, but it is powerful. It is sacred, and it is covered. Heaven backs you. The Holy Spirit guides you, and the one who assigned you has already gone ahead of you. So, don't retreat. Don't question what's already been confirmed, and never again confuse divine silence for divine absence. You are not lost. You are not alone. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. You are not forsaken. You are assigned. And everything is still going according to heaven's plan. You were marked early, before you even had the language to describe what you felt, before you knew what calling meant, even before you fully understood who God was. You were already different. And not by your choice, by design. You didn't ask for it, but you felt it. That inner tension, that deep knowing that something about you didn't align with the world around you, while others could drift and dabble in darkness without consequence. You couldn't. When you tried to blend in, something inside you recoiled. When you compromised, conviction wouldn't let you rest. That wasn't your guilt. That was your marking. You were marked by heaven, and the enemy knew it. Long before you stepped into your identity, the enemy was already launching attacks to delay, distract, and dismantle what God placed in you. That childhood trauma, that betrayal in your teenage years, that insecurity that followed you for years, none of it was random. All of it was hell's attempt to poison what God was preparing. But here's what darkness didn't anticipate. You'd survive. You'd outlive the storm. You'd outgrow the lies. You'd press past the fear, because what was in you wasn't just potential, it was prophetic. You weren't born to wander, you were born to warn. You weren't born to be normal, you were born to lead. And every attempt to extinguish your light has only made it burn brighter. There's something powerful about those who were marked before they were ready. When you were a child, you were already sensitive to the atmosphere. You noticed what others ignored. You discerned spirits you didn't have names for. You saw through fakeness. You felt what was left unspoken. You had dreams that didn't make sense until much later. That wasn't imagination. That was spiritual wiring. And hell saw it. So it tried to confuse your mind. It tried to distort your identity. It sent voices to mock you, isolate you, label you as too much, too sensitive, too intense. But really, you were just too chosen to blend in with the crowd. Even when you tried to run from your calling, it ran after you. You tried to bury your light, and it still leaked out. You tried to lose yourself in the noise, but God's hand kept pulling you back, because being marked means you don't get to live like everyone else. It means you're set apart, watched, protected, prepared for more. This is why you've battled so hard. You've carried more than your age should have allowed. You've endured burdens you didn't have words to describe, but you've also grown in ways others couldn't see. You've gained depth, discernment, fire, not through comfort, but through clashing with darkness and still choosing the light. And now, you're waking up to that truth. You're not just marked, you're matured. The lessons life taught you didn't destroy your faith, they defined it. The wounds you carry aren't weaknesses, they're weapons. Your survival isn't random, it's revelation. Every scar speaks of a battle that didn't get the final say. Every tear is a seed for the glory rising in you now. Scripture says in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 27, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." That peace has been your anchor. When everything else was chaos, He kept you. When your mind was spinning and your heart was shattering, He held you. When you thought the call had passed you by, He preserved it. Because what God marks, He maintains. You don't need external validation to prove what's been placed inside you. Heaven's seal is greater than man's approval. You don't need to beg for a platform. Your presence is already prophetic. Your walk, your words, your worship, it all carries weight in the spirit realm. The enemy knows it. That's why the warfare has increased. Because now that you know who you are, you're unstoppable. Now that you're awake to your assignment, you're dangerous. Now that you've accepted your marking, you're walking with clarity, and clarity terrifies darkness. This is the moment where you shift from survival to strategy, where you stop asking, "Why me?" and start declaring, "Send me." Because marked ones aren't just called to endure. They're called to invade. You're not just a survivor, you're a signal, a sign that God still marks people for His glory, a reminder that darkness never gets the final word. So if this word has confirmed what you've felt for years, if you've always known there was something different, if you've battled with that difference, but now you're ready to accept it, comment below. I've been marked. 1. That's it. Just those 3 words. Not for performance, not for numbers, but as a prophetic declaration. I know who I am. I know what I carry, and I'm ready to walk in it. Chosen one, you are marked. You are unmuzzled, and you are just getting started. The detour was the direction. You didn't get lost. You didn't miss your calling. You didn't fall behind. You were rerouted by the hand of God Himself. And while you stood there staring at the wreckage of your former plans, trying to figure out where it all went wrong, heaven was watching over the unfolding of a much higher plan, one that didn't need your understanding, only your obedience. You thought you were stuck. You weren't. You thought you were being punished. You weren't. You thought the years were wasted. They weren't. God was building in secret what He plans to reveal in glory. What looked like delay was divine construction. Think about it. The road you're on right now wasn't the one you imagined. Not even close. You didn't see the betrayal coming. You didn't plan for the loss. You didn't sign up for the waiting. But now that you've survived it, now that you've walked through the fire and not been consumed, can you see it? The detour wasn't a mistake. It was the making of you. Because if you had gone the way you wanted, you wouldn't have the depth you now carry. You wouldn't have the compassion, the clarity, the discernment, the fire. The direct path may have been faster, but it wouldn't have made you stronger. And God is not in the business of raising the fastest. He's in the business of raising the faithful, the ones who will keep walking when it feels like no one sees, the ones who will keep praising even when nothing changes, the ones who learn to trust in the dark what God showed them in the light. You, chosen one, are one of those. That detour trained your ears to hear Him more clearly. It slowed your pace so you could learn His presence. It broke your pride so He could build your purpose. It pulled you away from what looked good so you could be prepared for what's truly God ordained. The Word of God declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, verse 4, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." You've walked through valleys deeper than most. You've questioned your direction more times than you can count. But what the valley didn't teach you, the detour did. You had to unlearn the maps drawn by man so you could be led by the compass of the Spirit. And now you know every pit stop, every pause, every tear, none of it was wasted. You didn't lose time. You gained testimony. You didn't take a wrong turn. You followed a divine route that others don't even recognize. You were walking in obedience even when it didn't look successful. And now, your life is being aligned, not in the way you expected, but in the exact way God intended. Because there are no wasted roads in the hands of the Master. So stop apologizing for the time it took. Stop regretting the things that didn't work out. Stop cursing the steps you had to take. Everything you thought disqualified you was actually a tool God used to prepare you. He didn't send you the long way to frustrate you. He sent you that way to form you. Now you have insight others don't. You've walked with God through silence. And you still stayed. You've been refined in private. And you didn't give up. You've carried the weight, felt the cost, stayed the course. And now, heaven is saying, well done. The road you took wasn't random, it was intentional. You didn't miss it. You didn't ruin it. You're right on time for what's about to unfold. And listen, if this word is hitting you right where you are, if you've been looking at your journey and feeling like you missed something, like it should have happened by now, like maybe you're too far gone, stop. That shame is not from God. That lie is from the pit. And it's time to shut it down. You are not late. You are not off course. You are exactly where you need to be. The road you took was hard, but it was holy. And if you feel that in your spirit, if you know this was God reminding you that your detour was divine, then take a second to do 3 things. Like this message, not for attention, but as a sign that your spirit agrees. Share this with someone you know is questioning their path, wondering if it's too late, battling the weight of delay. Be the confirmation they've been crying for. And subscribe, because this is just one layer of what God is unfolding in your life, and more confirmation is coming. Chosen one. Your feet are not lost. They are led. The detour was not punishment. It was preparation. And it's about to make perfect sense. You're not behind. You're becoming. It's time to stop measuring your progress by the pace of others. You were never meant to follow their timeline, never meant to mirror their milestones. Heaven doesn't move by the rhythm of this world, and neither do those who are chosen. The delay you keep mourning isn't delay, it's divine development. You are not slow. You are being shaped. God is not withholding from you. He's working within you. The world moves fast, demands quick results, celebrates shallow success. But what God is building in you takes time, because what you're carrying is weighty, generational, sacred, and sacred things are never rushed. You've looked at others and thought, I should be further along by now. You've scrolled through highlights and wondered why your own breakthrough hasn't arrived. But you're looking at speed while God is focused on stability. The foundation He's laying in your life has to go deep so that what's coming next can stand tall. Others are sprinting, but you're being anchored, because your destiny isn't just about you. It's about legacy. The calling on your life isn't surface, it's seismic. You weren't born to simply have success. You were born to cause shifts. And you can't carry that kind of movement without first being moved deeply in the secret places of your soul. There's a refining happening that others don't see. A stretching that's breaking things open inside you. Your heart. Your mind. Your identity. It's all being rebuilt from the inside out. You don't feel ahead because you're being unmade first. That's how God works. He tears down what ego built, so He can raise up what only grace can sustain. And it hurts. It's confusing. You see people celebrating while you're still shedding. You see others arriving while you're still healing. But chosen one. Don't confuse visibility with victory. Some people arrive quickly because they're not carrying much. You're carrying nations through your words. Your obedience, your intercession, your story. You are not late. You are right on heaven's time. And that time moves differently. It doesn't answer to pressure. It doesn't react to panic. It obeys purpose. So when it feels like everything around you is moving ahead while you're stuck in stillness, remind your soul, God is not slow. He is strategic. And every hidden moment, every painful pause, every closed door has been part of that strategy. Your story is being written by hands that do not make mistakes. Think of Joseph, betrayed, imprisoned, forgotten. Yet every detour was leading to a throne. Think of David, anointed but not appointed, sent back to the fields after being called king. He spent years in obscurity before anyone saw what God already knew. And Jesus, our ultimate example, waited 30 years for a ministry that lasted 3. We find in the book of Isaiah, chapter 42, verse 31, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles." You've been hoping, waiting, holding on when others let go. And that waiting has not weakened you, it's fortified you. God is not just preparing the promise, He's preparing you to handle the promise when it arrives. Because the breakthrough is coming, but it won't just elevate you, it will expose you, it will test what you've built. And that's why God takes His time with those He trusts. He'd rather form you in fire than rush you into a spotlight that burns up the unprepared. So, breathe. Release the panic. You are not falling behind. You are becoming someone who cannot be moved. You are growing roots, gaining vision, learning to steward oil, becoming fluent in the whisper of God. And when the time comes, and it will, you won't just step into favor. You'll step in with the character to carry it. You won't implode under pressure. You'll stand firm in authority because you weren't rushed into greatness. You were forged into it. This is not delay. This is not punishment. This is process. And process is sacred. It is the furnace where false identities are burned off. It is the womb where endurance is born. It is the narrow road that leads not just to destiny, but to depth. So, walk through it boldly. Don't let comparison steal what God is forming uniquely in you. Don't let timelines define a destiny that was written in eternity. You're not waiting for permission. You're walking in process. You're not falling behind. You're becoming all you were created to be. And what you're becoming is worth every moment it's taking. The fire didn't burn you, it branded you. What you walked through wasn't just heat, it was holy. You didn't come out of it empty. You came out marked. The pain, the pressure, the seasons where everything felt like it was falling apart, that wasn't destruction. That was divine designation. The fire didn't come to consume you. It came to confirm you. There are some things God can only activate in the flames, because fire reveals what's real. When the comfort is stripped, when the applause fades, when everything you depended on turns to ash, that's when identity gets forged. And chosen one. You didn't just survive the fire. You learned how to walk through it with purpose. Every trial, every betrayal, every sleepless night, those were the furnaces where your authority was birthed. You've been through things others couldn't endure. You've carried heat that others ran from. And you didn't just walk out of that season unchanged. You walked out sealed. What was burned off was never meant to last. What remained is what heaven trusted you to carry. You are not fragile. You are fire-tested. And the proof of that fire isn't just in your strength, it's in your spirit. You've got a different kind of boldness now. You're not easily shaken. You speak from a place of knowing. You don't chase hype. Because you've walked with He who is holy. You don't need to pretend anymore. The branding on your life says enough. See, some people want the crown but reject the flames. They want the oil but flee from the altar. But not you. You stayed. You didn't understand it all. But you remained. When everything inside you wanted to run, something deeper held you in place. That something was the Spirit of God. It was written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 2. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. And that wasn't a poetic promise. It was a prophetic word over your life. Because the flames didn't have permission to kill you. They had permission to commission you. You were commissioned in the fire, crowned in the furnace, anointed in the ashes. The places where others left you for dead became altars of revival. Where you were mocked, you will now be marked. Where you were silenced, you will now be sent. Because you're not just called, you've been proven. Don't downplay it. Don't hide the scars. You earned them in battle. You walked through storms that tried to drown you and came out drenched in glory. You may not look like what you've been through, but heaven remembers, and so does hell. That's why the enemy trembles when you speak, because your words aren't empty. They're backed by fire. Every prayer you pray now carries weight. Every step you take now breaks ground. Because the fire didn't just leave you standing, it left you supernatural. You have authority now that only comes through suffering. The kind of authority that can't be taught, only lived. Others might question you, but they didn't see the flames. They didn't see the night you almost gave up. They didn't hear your whispered prayers in the dark. They weren't there when your knees hit the floor and the presence of God met you in your lowest moment. But heaven was there. The Spirit hovered over your ashes. And from that place, He breathed again. And now you walk with fire in your bones. Now you carry oil that only comes from pressing. Now you understand why it took what it took. You're not just someone who went through the fire. You're someone who was transformed by it. So don't be surprised when God begins to send you to others still in the flames. Don't be shocked when you become the voice that pulls people out of what you once barely escaped. You are not just a testimony, you are a torch. And the fire that branded you is now the fire that will light the path for someone else. Chosen one. If this word is piercing your soul, if you know the fire didn't kill you but branded you, then type this number below as a declaration of truth. Comment 555. This number represents divine transformation, spiritual shift, and the grace to walk in a new dimension. Type it as a prophetic act, a sign that you understand now. The fire wasn't the end, it was the beginning. You are not bitter. You are branded. You are not ruined. You are refined. And your fire season was never punishment. It was your promotion. You've carried more than most. Let that truth wash over you for a moment, not as pity, but as perspective. The weight you've walked with hasn't been ordinary, and neither has the calling on your life. You weren't given the easy path, because your purpose was never small. What you've endured would have crushed others. What you've carried emotionally, spiritually, generationally has not been light. And yet, you kept moving. While others coasted, you climbed. While others were celebrated for what came easy, you were hidden while God gave you assignments with eternal impact. The burden on your back has been heavy, but the oil on your life is holy. Because what you carry is not just for you, it's for everyone connected to your obedience. You've had to bear spiritual weight since before you even knew how to name it. You've interceded in silence. You've warred in the spirit while smiling in public. You've discerned what others dismissed. And you've wept for people who never knew you were standing in the gap for them. Why? Because you were chosen to carry what others couldn't. That heaviness hasn't been a curse, it's been a calling. Even as a child, you saw things differently. You felt things deeply. You were more aware, more sensitive, more awake. That sensitivity was never weakness, it was preparation. God was training you to recognize the unseen, to pick up the burdens of those around you, to step into rooms and shift atmospheres, not because of what you said, but because of what you carried in the spirit. And let's be honest, there were times it almost broke you. There were moments you sat on the edge of your own strength, wondering how much longer you could keep carrying everything. Family burdens, financial pressure, emotional weight, expectations no one else had to live under. You felt like you had to be strong for everyone, while silently wondering who would be strong for you. But through it all, something in you never let go. That wasn't stubbornness. That was spirit-born endurance. You didn't keep going because it was easy. You kept going because you were graced to carry it. Even when your mind was exhausted, your spirit was anchored. Even when your heart was breaking, your feet kept moving, because God put something in you that the enemy still can't figure out. You've been pressed, but you didn't break. You've been stretched, but you didn't snap. You've been pushed to the edge, but you never fell off. Instead, you grew, because every burden became a training ground. Every tear became water for the roots of your resilience. Every hardship deepened your authority. You're not just someone who talks about faith. You've lived it in the fire. You've stood in the middle of spiritual storms and declared peace when everything around you screamed panic. It was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 2, verse 12, "If we endure, we will also reign with him." Chosen one. You've endured, and now you're being positioned to reign, not to dominate people, but to take dominion in the Spirit, to speak with authority, to intercede with weight, to walk into atmospheres and shift the climate without saying a word. The weight you've carried in private is about to manifest in public influence. The strength you built in the shadows is about to support what others will see in the spotlight. You are not average. You are anointed. Not because life has been easy, but because you stayed faithful when it wasn't. You didn't drop the assignment. You didn't quit the process. You didn't run from the burden. And because of that, heaven has been watching. Angels have been dispatched. Oil has been accumulating. And your next step will not be random, it will be releasing. So stop thinking you're too tired to carry the next thing. You're actually stronger than ever. Stop wondering if you missed it. You didn't. Everything you've carried has been building toward what's next. And no, it hasn't been fair, but it has been forged. God trusted you with the weight, because he knew it wouldn't crush you, it would crown you. Others have been watching your consistency without knowing the cost. But God sees. He saw every lonely night, every silent prayer, every tear you wiped so no one else would see. And now, he's saying, "You've carried enough. Now watch what I do through it." Chosen one. The load was heavy, but it produced something eternal. And what you carry now, it's not just weight, it's glory. You are the curse breaker. The battles you've fought, the ones no one else in your bloodline dared to confront, weren't accidental. You weren't born into your family by coincidence. You were sent to interrupt cycles, sent to expose the patterns that kept generations bound, sent to be the one who finally said, "This stops with me." You've felt it, haven't you? That weight, that invisible war. You've wrestled with things your parents never faced, or refused to face. You've questioned why it had to be you, why the heaviness clings to your last name, why freedom has felt like such a fight. It's because you're not just living your own life. You're rewriting your family's story. And that kind of calling doesn't come without conflict. You weren't called to continue what has always been. You were chosen to confront it. The fear, the addiction, the emotional silence, the poverty mindset, the compromise, the shame, the religion without relationship, whatever has plagued your bloodline. You've been marked to destroy it, not carry it. And yes, it's cost you. It's cost you relationships. It's cost you your comfort. It's cost you the illusion of normalcy. You've walked through seasons where you felt like a stranger in your own family. You've sat at tables where no one understood your hunger for God, your conviction, your refusal to repeat what has always been accepted. But that tension wasn't rejection, it was revelation. It revealed that you are different. It exposed that you were set apart, not better burdened with a responsibility to break what's been looping for far too long. And breaking it hasn't been easy. You've had to face demons others tolerated. You've had to forgive people who never said sorry. You've had to fast when no one else was praying. You've had to step into spiritual warfare without applause, without backup, without a manual. But still you stood. Why? Because deep in your spirit, you knew this wasn't just about you. You were fighting for children you haven't even met yet, for siblings who are still stuck, for a legacy that had no chance of shifting until you showed up carrying fire instead of fear. The Word of God declares in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 6, "But showing steadfast love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments." No, you are the beginning of 1,000 generations of blessing. That's why the warfare has been so relentless. The enemy wasn't just trying to take you out, he was trying to preserve the curse. Because the moment you break it, it loses access. The moment you say, "No more," you shut doors that have been open for decades. That's why your life has felt like a battlefield. Because it is. But you were born for this. You were born with the fire to confront what others ignored. You were born with the discernment to see the root. You were born with the courage to cut it off. You may have been raised in dysfunction, but dysfunction won't raise your future. What formed you will not define you. And make no mistake, just because the curse showed up in your life doesn't mean it belongs to you. It showed up because it knew you were the one to destroy it. Hell doesn't bother people who pose no threat. But you've been a threat from the moment you said yes to God. You've been hunted because you're heaven's weapon against generational bondage. You're not cursed, you're called. You're not fragile, you're favored. You're not trapped, you're transformed. You've been sent into a line of brokenness to bring restoration. And every time you choose obedience, every time you turn your face toward God instead of bitterness, every time you speak blessing instead of repeating what was spoken over you, you are swinging a sword in the Spirit. You may not see the full fruit yet. You may still feel the tension, but heaven sees the roots breaking beneath the surface. You're disrupting centuries of darkness, not with perfection, but with presence, with your yes, with your prayers, with your decisions, with your refusal to bow to what bowed everyone else. And this is only the beginning. One day, the future will look back and call you blessed, not just because of what you built, but because of what you broke. You were the interruption, the shift, the collision between generational pain and generational promise. You are the curse breaker. And the freedom you've been fighting for, it's already spreading. Darkness knows your name. That's why the battles have been intense. That's why the resistance hasn't let up. That's why your life has never felt normal. It's because the moment you were born, a spiritual alarm went off in hell's camp. A chosen one had entered the battlefield, and the darkness could sense it. You've always carried something, even when you didn't understand it, even when you doubted it, even when you tried to suppress it to fit in, to blend, to make others comfortable. But heaven never allowed you to settle. Why? Because what you carry disturbs the kingdom of darkness. You don't just walk into rooms, you shift them. Your presence breaks patterns. Your prayers crack foundations. Your words carry fire. That's not imagination, that's spiritual reality. The warfare didn't come because you were weak, it came because you're dangerous. Every time you chose light over compromise, every time you resisted temptation, every time you opened your mouth in prayer, you sent tremors through demonic realms. The enemy doesn't waste resources. He only attacks what he fears. And your obedience, your hunger for God, your willingness to go deeper when others stay shallow, that's what hell fears most. Because once a chosen one wakes up, there's no going back. When you were asleep to your calling, the enemy had room to work. But now, you're rising. You're recognizing the patterns. You're seeing the attacks for what they are, not random, but targeted. You're not just enduring anymore, you're engaging. You're not just taking hits, you're hitting back. You've become a threat. And the enemy would rather have seen you crushed under pressure than becoming who you are today. But God has preserved you. Not only preserved you, anointed you. And now that you're walking in that anointing, it's clear, darkness can't stop you. It can only try to distract you. But you're too alert for that now. Too seasoned, too rooted, too refined by fire to be rattled by noise. That's why the enemy keeps sending discouragement, keeps trying to isolate you, keeps whispering lies, hoping you'll back down, shrink back, give up. But chosen one, hear me clearly, this is not the time to retreat. This is the time to rise with fire in your eyes and authority in your bones. Because hell knows your name, but heaven knows your future. The prophet Elijah spoke as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 21. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is hot, follow him. But the people said nothing. This is not the time to waver. You've tasted too much of God to go back to spiritual apathy. You've seen too much to pretend you didn't. You've survived too much to act like you're just here to exist. You are not a background believer. You are a battlefield weapon. And every time you speak truth, chains break. Every time you worship through weariness, strongholds weaken. Every time you love radically, serve humbly, forgive boldly, you expose the enemy. You remind him that what he tried didn't work, that the pit he dug for you became the platform God used to launch you. That's why you can't afford to go quiet now. That's why you can't afford to doubt your impact, even when you don't see the evidence. Understand this. The spirit realm has already shifted. Your yes has already begun to tear down walls. Your obedience has already started delivering those watching you, and someone is watching you. There are people whose freedom is tied to your faithfulness. People who will step into their calling because you didn't quit. People who will believe again because you kept standing. This is bigger than feelings. This is legacy. This is war. And you're winning. So don't let your flame dim. Don't shrink to be accepted. Don't stay silent to be safe. Chosen one. You were never created for comfort. You were created for conquest. And if this word lit something in your spirit, if it confirmed what you've sensed but didn't have words for, then now is the moment to act. Like this message. Because it's more than words. It's a witness. It says, I agree. This is my season. I will rise. Share it with someone else who's been walking through darkness, unaware that they are a threat to it. Remind them who they are. Subscribe if you haven't already, because there is more revelation coming, more messages just for you, for your mission, and for your mantle. And finally, comment below with these 3 simple but thunderous words. I won't retreat. Let that be your declaration. Let that be your defiance. Let hell hear it loud and clear. The chosen one is not backing down. You've been hunted, but you're still here. You've been hit, but you're still standing. You've been through hell, but you came out carrying heaven. Darkness knows your name, but it cannot stop your rise. You were crowned in the shadows, before anyone clapped, before anyone noticed, before anyone affirmed your worth. God had already done it in secret. Your authority didn't come from public approval. It came from private obedience. When no one was watching, you were still faithful. When it didn't make sense, you still said yes. When it hurt, you stayed surrendered. That's where the crown was placed, not on a stage, but in silence. You didn't need the spotlight to be significant. You didn't need applause to be anointed. You were crowned long before you were seen. And the reason you carry such unshakable grace now is because you were willing to walk with God when no one else was looking. Some people confuse visibility with value, but you've learned the truth. The unseen seasons are where God does his deepest work. That's where he tests your motives. That's where he strips away the need to perform. That's where he teaches you to hear him, not through noise, but through whispers. And it was in that hidden place that you were crowned, not with a crown of gold, but with a crown of responsibility, of insight, of authority, of weight. A crown not made for decoration, but for dominion. You didn't just receive something pretty, you received something powerful. Because crowns aren't given to the loudest. They're given to the loyal, and you've been loyal, even when you were overlooked, even when you were misunderstood, even when others were promoted while you were being pruned. You kept showing up, kept serving, kept praying, kept obeying. You were proving in silence what many couldn't prove in the spotlight. You could be trusted. God never forgot the seeds you sowed in secret, the tears you cried in the dark, the decisions you made that cost you comfort. While others were chasing stages, you were chasing his face. And while they were building platforms, he was building your character. That's why your crown doesn't slip. It's rooted in integrity. You didn't earn it through charm. You received it through crushing. The weight you now carry wasn't given, it was forged. And now you walk with quiet authority. Not loud, not boastful, but unmistakable. Because those who are crowned in secret never have to prove themselves in public. The Word of God declares in the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 6, "When you pray, go in secret, close the door behind you, speak to your unseen Father. He sees what no eye sees. He hears what no ear hears. Your reward will not be lost." You've lived this verse. You've been in that room. You've prayed those hidden prayers. And you've learned that God's greatest gifts aren't always loud. Sometimes they look like peace that doesn't make sense, clarity that breaks through confusion, strength when you should be breaking. These are the rewards of the secret place. These are the markings of those crowned in the shadows. And here's the truth. Not everyone will understand your journey. They'll wonder how you got the wisdom you carry. They'll be surprised by the fire in your voice. They'll ask where your confidence comes from. But you won't need to explain, because the ones crowned in secret walk with a power that speaks for itself. You've been hidden, but not forgotten. You've been underestimated, but not overlooked by God. The silence was not punishment, it was preservation. He shielded you from visibility so he could shape you in purity. And now that the foundation is deep, now that the roots are strong, he's about to reveal what he's built. But remember this, the real crown isn't made of gold or recognition. The real crown is authority in the Spirit. And you've earned that authority the only way heaven approves, through surrender. You surrendered when it was hard. You surrendered when it was lonely. You surrendered when it didn't benefit you. That's why you carry what you carry. That's why your words hit different. That's why your presence shifts atmospheres. Because there's something real on your life, something paid for in the dark, something that didn't come cheap. So when the doors begin to open, when the favor begins to flow, when the spotlight finds you, don't forget where the crown came from. Don't forget the nights you wept on the floor, the fasts no one knew about, the forgiveness you gave in silence, the worship you lifted in brokenness. That's where the crown was placed. That's where your oil was pressed. And that's why what's coming next is not promotion, it's purpose fulfilled. You were crowned in the shadows, and now God is preparing to bring you into the light, not to elevate you, but to magnify what he formed in secret. This was the design all along, the road you walked, the long way, the hard way, the winding, painful, tear-filled way. It was never random. It was never punishment. It was never a detour. It was design, carefully mapped, heaven ordained, divinely calculated to lead you not only to your calling, but to your becoming. Because God wasn't just interested in getting you to a destination, he was always after your transformation. He didn't just want you to arrive. He wanted you to arrive with oil, with wisdom, with authority, with weight. And you don't get that from shortcuts. You get that from fire. Every twist in the road served a purpose. Every delay refined your patience. Every closed door deepened your trust. Every heartbreak stripped away what couldn't stay. Every silent season carved space for stillness. And in all of it, God wasn't just shaping your path, he was shaping you. Looking back now, can you see it? The places you begged to escape were actually holy ground. The jobs you lost, the relationships that ended, the moments that felt like collapse, those weren't breakdowns. They were turning points. The very pain you thought disqualified you became the pressure that produced endurance. You didn't fall off track. You were pulled into alignment. Because the design wasn't just about where you were going. It was about who you had to become to carry what was coming. The process was never about perfection. It was about preparation. God saw who you were beneath the survival instincts, beneath the masks, beneath the striving. He saw the version of you that could stand in fire and not flinch. The version of you that could speak truth and not shrink. The version of you that could walk in purpose, not for applause, but for eternity. And He brought you through everything necessary to bring that version of you forward. You cried through it. You questioned it. You doubted Him. But still, you moved. Still, you obeyed. Still, you showed up with a heart half broken, but hands lifted. That's what makes you dangerous. You're not just someone who talks about God. You've met Him in the trenches, in the disappointment, in the unanswered prayers, in the long nights when all you had was His presence. And that is why you cannot be shaken now, because you don't believe out of theory. You believe out of history. You carry testimony now, not the polished kind, not the neatly packaged, "Look what God did for me" version, but the raw, unsanitized. I walked through hell and came out with fire, kind. You carry the kind of story that doesn't just inspire, it delivers. Because it proves one thing: God wastes nothing. Not a single tear, not a single failure, not a single day in the wilderness. He used it all. Scripture says in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 28, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." That's not just a verse to you. That's your reality. Because the very things that should have disqualified you became the reason you were equipped. The very story that was meant to shame you has become the story that sets others free. And the very road that looked like a detour turned out to be the only way to the life God always had in mind for you. Chosen one, what you've been through isn't wasted. It's woven into purpose, woven into strategy, woven into a plan bigger than you ever imagined. And you're not just walking into destiny, you're walking into confirmation that the design wasn't broken, that the delays weren't denials, that the pain wasn't punishment. It was all part of heaven's blueprint to bring forth the version of you hell hoped would never rise. Now you carry peace that doesn't come from ease, but from endurance. You carry fire that doesn't come from hype, but from history. You carry weight that didn't come from man, but from the Maker. And now, as you stand here at the edge of the next chapter, let this truth settle in your spirit. You are not late. You are not lost. You are not too broken. You are exactly where God knew you'd be: stronger, wiser, bolder, and more surrendered than ever. This was never about a straight path. It was about a sacred process. And now, you carry design in your bones. This was the design all along. And you, chosen one, are finally ready to walk in it. You made it, not just to the end of this message, but to the edge of a brand new season. And it's not by chance. It's not because you scrolled long enough or stumbled on the right post. It's because heaven led you here. This was a divine setup, a confirmation, a reminder that your life has been strategic all along. You've heard the truth now, not just about your calling, but about your becoming. You've walked through valleys, endured fire, conquered silence, and still, you've emerged with a heart that believes. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you dangerous to darkness. You are not average. You are anointed, and the world is going to feel the weight of your obedience. So, If this journey, these words stirred something in your spirit, if you felt seen, heard, awakened, then don't keep it to yourself. Like this message as a declaration that your yes to God still stands, that you're not going back, that you recognize this was never just content, it was a commissioning. Share this word with someone else who's been questioning their path, someone who's been quietly carrying weight, someone who needs to remember they're chosen. 2. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Stay connected, not to a platform, but to a prophetic flow, because more is coming. Word after word, layer after layer, truth that meets you where you are and pushes you toward who you're becoming. Finally, drop a comment, one that seals what this has stirred in you. Whether it's, I receive, I'm ready, or still standing. Speak it, declare it. Let heaven and hell both hear it. Chosen one. This is not the end. It's your beginning in full authority.